Core aligned exam for grades 3 through 11. There's a change in that the writing has only occurred in grades 4, 8, and 10. Currently, that will shift to each grade. 3 through 11 will be assessed on reading and writing. Mathematics in 8th grade, that will transition to the Common Core aligned assessment. Algebra and geometry will change to a Common Core aligned as well as Algebra 2. You'll see that FCAT 2.0 science will remain. There are not different science standards that we have adopted, so they will remain on the FCAT assessment. And then the biology, U.S. history, and civics EOCs will also stay the same. So we mentioned earlier there were literacy standards in the other subjects, but that will not change the other standards. The literacy go back to ELA. So the assessment is focused on making sure students are comprehending complex text, that their questions are not just Susie had on a yellow dress, what color was Susie's dress? Yellow. Mark in your C circle. It's pulling real information, seeing that they understand the relationship of the characters, of the events in that text, and making sure that they're using evidence in that text to find their answer. Move on. So here's an example of a current assessment question. Mr. Avery bought 4 new play kitchens for his pre-kindergarten classrooms. Each play kitchen cost $139. How much did Mr. Avery pay for 4 play kitchens? Pretty simple. You take the cost times the number. Fill in your answer, mark your circle. Under our Common Core, questions are a little more complex. They're multi-step. So we have, classes are going on a field trip. There are these many people in each class. They can take these 3 options as vehicles. Find the different options, the different combinations that they can have. So the student has to kind of show their work to see that they understand not only multiplication, but pairing those different things together. So there are a few resources that if you are more interested in, there's scorestandards.org, which has all the information about the Common Core State Standards. FloridaStandards.org, which is a link to CFOMS. It's a resource by the department that houses all of our educational standards and resources for parents and teachers as well on lesson plans, on activities. It's going for a redesign, so it will in the next month have several new resources. I think that will be even more helpful. There's also, if you'd like to view what it looks like in the classroom, there is a website called teachingchannel.org. If you go there and search Common Core, you'll be able to find videos of teachers who have been reported in their classroom with their students, and then you can look at what instruction looks like under Common Core. The department will be launching a new website in the next month focused on information and resources for parents and teachers on Common Core. We will be having an awareness campaign going this fall. We're also going to be launching some informational webinars for parents and others in the coming months, so look for those. But that is all I have, so I will turn it over to Dr. Creed Wilson and Dan Fias for the student data.
Good morning. Dr. Wheeler and I are going to kind of tag team through this and different areas of expertise. But the first one we're going to talk about this morning is FERPA. And it's the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and it's been in effect for many, many years in this country. It is a federal law. It was written specifically for educational institutions and specifically with regard to rights of parents and the protection of students' educational records. So they're official, they're confidential documents that are protected by one of the strongest privacy acts ever passed in this nation. And again, this is a federal law. Okay? Primary rights of parents and eligible students are that they can inspect and review their child's educational records. They can seek to amend an educational record if they feel that something that is contained in there is inaccurate. They also have some control over the disclosure of information in the educational record. And by some control, it's really a great deal of control, but there are a few exceptions. Okay? Records, files, documents, electronic files, and other materials that contain information directly related to a student and are maintained by an educational facility. So it's part of those educational records on a student in this day and age. Some of them, many of them, are on our electronic system. Okay? Your students' grades are kept on an electronic system. And if you have a 10th grader and you needed to know what their grades were in the 3rd grade, we have an electronic system that will show you that. You can go back and give you the student grades. So some of the information contained that are considered personally identifiable or directory information is the child's name, family address, those types of things. Okay? Now the Social Security number, although protected, there are again a few exceptions. And but most information is very well protected. What must we do when consent is not required? Where are the exceptions to FERPA? Where do your child's records go when you do not need to have individual sign-off? That would be school officials who have a legitimate educational need to access your child's records. And an example of how we control that in the schools is a counselor at East Ridge High School can only see the students at East Ridge High School. She cannot see the students at South Lake High School, okay? Because that person would not have a legitimate right to have access to the records of your child. So they are limited within that electronic system to what they have a legitimate right to know. We can send to schools or post-secondary educational institutions in which the student seeks to enroll. So if your student transfers from Lake County to Marion County, and Marion County sends us information that says, little Jan Tobias is enrolling in Marion County, we can send those records to that school. The records belong to the child. So we would never withhold your child's educational records to go to a future educational facility. Another place that happens is for our graduates who are going on into some career or college plan. To institutions in connection with financial aid. Again, this is our college types of kids. The child has already applied to that college, and now that college needs information so that they can help determine what kind of financial aid the child might be eligible for. To accrediting or auditing organizations. And here, this is more group information. When we get audited to determine that we are following federal and state policies and procedures, an individual child's folder may be reviewed by that auditor to determine that we are operating legally. They are not interested in the particular child, but they are interested in the process that the district followed to ensure that the rights of the child and the program is being followed correctly. If we are subpoenaed to report action, and we must release records in a case of law enforcement, where they are investigating a crime. Public health officials have rights to all health information on any child, okay, because they are the keepers. And if for some reason a trained medical personnel might need to get in, like in our elementary schools, we have nurses. They would be able to go in and access information. Again, consent is not required to organizations conducting studies on behalf of educational institutions. However, they are not accessing individual student data in the sense of tied to a child's name. And in our district, we have a very rigorous policy that must be followed before anybody can come in and do any kind of research. And that is handled through testing and evaluation with Dr. Kathleen Thomas. So very few people come into our district for the very reason that we have a very strong policy and procedure in place. To comply with orders related to the Patriots Act. Again, we are receiving federal funds. If there is deemed to be something that is of national security, they have a right to come in. If a student is required to register as a sex offender, that information must be shared. During legal actions initiated by the parent or the district, once the lawyers are involved and somebody's suing somebody, the attorneys are going to have rights to the information. And disclosure of directory information. Now that would be your child is on the honor roll. For us to put that in the paper, it's considered to be directory information, and we do not need a parent's specific release to do that. But in the student code of conduct that every parent receives and signs that they receive is an opt-out clause. If for some reason you do not want your child's name, and we have some of those primarily for religious reasons, that do not want their child's name in the paper for all A's on their grade card or something, then there is an opt-out, and the parent is given those rights as soon as the child begins school, and they're given those rights each and every year. Okay, I'm going to refer to Dr. Wheeler now.
We do have a system, we have an ERP system, our student information system, enterprise resource planning system. And here's many of the fields and information you can collect. This presentation will be available if you would like a copy of it. Mr. Pappin certainly can give that to you. But I'm not going to read all of these. Demographic information, directory information, attendance, and all of this type of information is collected in our enterprise resource management system. We also have some other systems that we collect information in. We have the student grade book, we have, which is eSimilar, so we collect grades and we transmit those grades to our system. We have a media management system that checks books out and manages textbooks. We do track information in our food services, and we do have our emergency call-out system that we utilize to transmit emergency messages to individuals. And
Okay. Student assessment. Well, there are many different evaluation systems that are used, and we've got a good explanation of how that's in transition to in the next few years. But student information is acquired in the following manner. It's retrieved from the district student information system, which we talked about. It's reported to, sometimes DOE sends us information, and sometimes we send DOE information. It is child specific, but the state is not monitoring an individual child. They are monitoring the district with how our students are performing. Okay? It is our job as a district and as the teacher's job to monitor and to work with the parent with regards to the individual student. Assessment scores are loaded into the student information system, and right now we are using Legislative. Examples of other types of things that we use are some of the high school things, high school tests such as PERT, ACT, college readiness, the end of course exams for high school now, and there again, the high school requirements are under change again this year. But the end of course exam may be required to actually earn credit for it, so it has to be noted on the child's official transcript. Fair documentation is reading instruction, and again, although that is on the electronic system, that is there so that teachers can monitoring actively how a student is progressing in reading, and also looking at the areas of weakness in reading, so we know where to apply and to reinforce the learning. So all that information is contained within the student data system.
how do we collect the information? We collect it at the individual school, so clerical administrators, teachers can enter in the information. We do have some information that comes down from the state, mostly free and reduced lunch type data. And we do collect state assessment data that we also retrieve data from the state. And we do transmit our Bright Futures through a system the state has called FASTER, so they can get that information. The other question, why do we collect it? We collect it so that we can take care of district researched this as much as I can. It's happened since I've been in the system, but I found some places where we started collecting it in 85 and in 86, so a long time. We've been collecting information for a long time. Some data says 85, some data says 86. Who has access to this data? Each school, as Jan said, each school has access to that. We manage it through our Active Directory, so we can do that role-based, so that we don't give anyone access that shouldn't have access to that information. District level staff have access to look at all of the data so they can make appropriate decisions. And we do have some agreements with vendors. We have some agreements with vendors that we acquire services from. Some of those vendors have services where we use non-inclusive agreements, and we do not we make sure our attorneys and everyone review that. So some vendors, we provide services, or we receive services from those vendors. An example might be Pearson. They have a hosted solution where we acquire testing information from them. Why do we do that? What are reasons for accessing student data? We store it, we monitor it, we utilize it for grades, performance, we utilize it for reporting purposes so we can make good, sound business decisions. And data is used for a lot of things. Other kinds of student data. Again, we have Bright Futures where we do that for the particular Bright Futures scholarship, health records, transfer records, as Jan said, public records, public health records, and things of that nature, as Jan had already said. And is the data shared with other government organizations? We do share it with Armed Forces Limited. We do share it with other federal and state agencies, as Jan already indicated. And I want to introduce Andrea Hyatt. She's the teacher that's going to come up and introduce her peers. There's 3 of them. So thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Andrea Hyatt, and last year I taught science at Mount Dora High School. And I knew I was responsible for the science standards, or next-gen science standards, but I also realized that I was responsible for Common Core. So what I did is I seeked out my colleagues and said, hey, what does Common Core actually mean? This slide breaks it down for us teachers. It shows shift 1, says building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. Well, as a teacher in the classroom, what does that actually mean? Building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. I use my science textbook all the time. We use it as a resource. We look up things in it. Some examples, we document from it. But how can I build knowledge? How can I deepen my students' understanding through the use of content-rich nonfiction? So I went on to the second shift, and it's reading and writing and speaking grounded in evidence from text, both literary and informational. Well, being a science teacher, I knew that I'm responsible for the information. So back to shift 1, I need to build knowledge, okay, through content-rich nonfiction. But I also need to have my students read, write, and speak, and cite evidence from the text. Well, do I want them to just regurgitate back to me the textbook? No, no, no. So look at the third shift. The third shift is regular practice with complex text and using academic language. So that told me that I need to seek out additional sources, additional scientific articles, so that my kids can deepen their knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. They can cite evidence from multiple sources, and then they can also use that academic language proficiently. You go to the next. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is one of my favorite lessons. So this is before the Common Core shifts. Let me set the stage for you. So, students come into class and we will actually use our textbook. We will read a piece, we will discuss it as a class, we will pull out those key academic terms, and then we'll move into experimentation. This is a product that my students produced after experimentation. And you can see some pretty cool things there. There's an abstract, there's results, the methodology that they actually used to obtain their result when we did this experiment. You'll see literature cited, and you'll see discussion. So, here we are producing this great product, and I'm thinking, all right, we're using academic language. We read through the text, we discussed photosynthesis as a whole, and this is what my students produced. And they also went around and they talked to one another about this. Now, going back to those shifts for Common Core, I knew I needed to add complex text. So basically what I did is I took the same lesson, and if you keep on going, this is after Common Core. So think about that lesson that I just did. We read some in the textbook. Now, what I did is I added additional complex text from multiple sources. So, being in science, you can always find scientific journals, you can find articles about the various topics. So I added the complex text. I knew I was responsible for my students actually talking the language, the science language. We needed to speak in science code to one another. So, from there, I did the same lesson. However, at the end, you saw the mini posters that were around. What we did is we went from poster to poster, and my kids were able to generate or synthesize or produce from multiple sources from their own peers a writing product. Because again, we're responsible for reading, writing, and speaking, citing evidence from the text, and using academic language. So I feel that Common Core is going to move me to be a 21st century teacher to help my 21st century students. With that said, Kelly Cousineau from East Ridge Middle.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Your presence here shows your support and strong enthusiasm for Lake County Schools, and as a classroom teacher, I could not be more appreciative. My name is Kelly Cousineau. I am a proud teacher at East Ridge Middle School. As a middle school teacher, I've always considered it my role to sort of build on the solid foundation that is set at the elementary level while preparing our students for the rigor of the high school level. And with the emergence of the Common Core, I feel personally that I'm better equipped to do that for my students, because the Common Core focuses on an upward spiral. We're taking students, we're making sure that they have a strong literacy foundation as they move from one grade level to the next. Throughout the years, we will see this increase. In my role at East Ridge Middle School, I teach an elective course that focuses on accelerating critical thinking in our students in their rigorous coursework, which is the other classes that they take. This fall, I am very excited to build on those critical thinking skills with my students through the use of higher level questions, comprehensive reading skills, and writing skills. Now, we've heard a little bit about the reading skills already, and Andrea talked about the writing skills. I'm going to focus for just a minute on the higher level questioning skills, because that may be something that as you're thinking about, you're wondering, well, how does a student's ability to ask higher level questions and a teacher's ability to be able to respond to those affect what is happening in the classroom? So let's focus on that for just a minute. I'm going to give two examples of questions, and I want you just to kind of think about the questions themselves and think about the kinds of responses that you might get to them. So for question number one, what was the starting date of the Civil War? And question number two, can you analyze the causes of the Civil War? We can all agree that it focuses on the same topic from the same time era. but our responses and the types of in-depth learning that occurs based on the way the question is worded can very much change the depth of knowledge that our students reach. You heard Dr. Moxley mention earlier, and Ms. Stevens as well, that we're trying to get away from that mile wide and just an inch deep, and we're really trying to get our students to delve in deeper. So going back to those questions, the very first question was, what was the starting date of the Civil War? You've probably seen that on tests before. A student can answer that with basic memorization skills. That's not where we're trying to go as we're developing critical thinking. Just because a student can answer the starting date of the Civil War does not ensure that they have grasped any of the content that relates to that topic. When we look at our second question, can you analyze the causes of the Civil War? For a student to be able to answer that type of question, they have to go in depth. They have to be able to show that there is an understanding of some of the things that led to that very powerful event. Why do we want students to be able to ask higher level questions? Well, my job in my elective class is to build that skill in them so that as they go through their core classes throughout the day, they're asking those high level questions. And maybe they're responding to the high level questions that are posed by their teachers. We know that when students can ask the right kinds of questions, that they're better able to grasp the content that is being taught there.